Alright, let's get this over real fast. I'm not trying to really waste your time on this. You already clicked on the video, you know what you're looking for. You want to know how do you hit hard, how are people able to go ahead and do the bombs like you're seeing right here in the video. And mind you, it's not difficult to be pumping out damage like this. You just have to know what to do, and it's very simple. It's actually been a lot simpler recently. So, first off, basically throw away most of the things that you're hearing from most YouTubers. If they're telling you, oh, if you just stack enough pen, you just stack enough weapon damage, you'll be good. No, that's not how that works. You need to be stacking things that are percentage based, predominantly looking for a lot of damage done and crit damage. The more damage done and crit damage you can stack, the more damage you will do in the long run. Because at the end of the day, you can still get a lot of weapon damage and penetration while doing that. But if you're only stacking the latter, you're not going to see much damage. You're not going to see bombs like that. And hell, even though mag blade bombs have been nerfed, and that's what you're mostly seeing in this video, mag blade bombs, you can still do a majority of this damage. Yeah, you're not going to be hitting 34k VDs on people as consistent, but hitting a 20k isn't that wild. Hitting cars where there wasn't 20 people next to it for a 10k isn't difficult. You can still do a dispatch. So let's really get into it, right? First things first, how do you get damage done? This is arguably the hardest thing you can be stacking right now in the game. However, you're in the guide, let me explain. Easiest way right now is to go to a mag tune and simply run a lightning staff. You gain access to 12% increased damage done for your direct attacks. This is the most important thing you need to know about this. You're going to be running the Shock Pulsar as well. Reason why is because if you run the Shock Pulsar, the more people caught inside the Shock Pulsar's range, it will deal more damage to the enemies. So now you basically have access to the Master's Twin Cleave, while also applying a certain debuff called Minor Mangle, which lowers their health by 10% when you activate the skill. So now you have an AoE that's going to be increased by 12% just by you having the staff out and then hitting the skill. This also then stacks with any type of damage you do outside of dots. So if you use a single target skill, it is also increased by 12%. But the most important thing when it comes to say bombing and all this is the AoE damage. So keep that in mind. Lastly, let's get into really your class, because your class is going to make up a lot of things. Now, you having that 12% outside the class is about it. There's very little other things that you can do outside your class, unless we're talking about sets, and we'll get into sets later, that increase your damage done. So you already have 12% coming in through your lightning staff. What else can you get? Well, let's go into this. If you're on a mag blade right now, you can run a concealed weapon. That's going to give you another 10% damage done, and it's going to be a named passive. It's actually going to be Major Berserk. Now, you can then stack that with Minor Berserk, but that fucks up your bar space, and typically right now it's best to just run Shadowy Disguise and not have Camouflage Hunter at all, because you get the Major Savagery with the Shadowy Disguise. You don't need to run Camo Hunter for the Major Savagery, and typically that's how most people is getting their Minor Berserk as well, through Camo Hunter, because it has a passive that whenever you attack the target while flanking and you're on that bar, it's going to get you Minor Berserk. Well, you have the crit as well, I forget to say, but still. You know, they had a way where you can get that damage done. So, if you really want to min-max your damage, right, you can go and put the Minor Berserk on, but if you're in group, Minor Berserk is going to be given to you. So, more or less, you have the 12% alongside the Major Berserk, another 10, and then on top of that, the 5, right? That's going to get you to 27% increased damage done before we include your CP. Now, if you're not min-maxing it, if you are min-maxing it and you're not worried about that Minor Berserk because you can get it in group, you're at 22% damage done. That's actually really good, considering that, again, typically people aren't even getting close to that. Now, say you're on a say you're on a Sorcerer using the lightning staff. This is where things get really interesting, because you have that 12% increase. On top of that, you have a passive that increases your shock damage by 5%. So if we're just going off of Pulsar, you have off rip the 5% with the 12 getting you to 17%, but that's not where it ends, because there's another passive for the Sorcs that increase their damage done based off of the target's max health. It gives you 1% per 10% of their health, up to a maximum of 10%, aka if you hit them when they're at full health. So if you was to go and try to bomb somebody and they're at full health and you're on your mag Sorc, immediately, just by having the lightning staff and using Shock Pulsar, you're going to increase your damage to a maximum of 12 plus 5, 17 plus this additional 10% is leaving you at 27%. And then you're able to buff yourself with Minor Berserk through one of your skills called Dark Deal. Now, well, I believe it's Dark Conversion that gives it to you. The reason why I'm saying Dark Conversion is because you can get another buff that's very important later on. Right now, we've already just talked about damage done, and for the Sorks, if you go and attempt a bomb, in terms of your damage done, you're already sitting at an impressive 27%. Get the extra 5% coming in through Minor Berserk. Now, we're looking at, what, 32% increased damage done. Now, let's go into the DKs and really explain what's going on there. DKs, for this setup, we're going to be running dual wield. We won't be running a lightning staff, but you can still include the lightning staff so you can see easy ways to increase that damage even more. There's side benefits that you can consider that you can lose. But for this one, we're having dual wield, so we won't have that 12% increased damage done. However, there's passives that DKs can use. If you're using primarily flame skills, you will be able to abuse the fact that most people in Cyrodiil are vampires and they're stage 3. With that common knowledge, that means that if you're running any flame skills and it hits a vampire, they're going to take 13% more flame damage. So we can just add it into our damage done meter. We'll take that 13%, stack that with the 5% that you get for having the DK and the passives, because you do 5% more damage with flame skills immediately. So already we just increase our damage done by 18%. But wait, there's more. With this 18%, we can then still gain access to Chains of Devastation, which gives us Major Berserk, and then Minor Berserk can still come in through Camo Hunter, but at the same time, say you're in group, you can get the Minor Berserk. So off that alone, we're getting fairly good damage done, but then we can debuff the enemy, and this is where debuffs come into play. But I really want to touch on Engulfing Flames debuff, because it's not a named debuff, it's different. It's not a major or minor debuff. So the debuff that Engulfing Flame does is it makes you take 6% more flame damage. So if you include that into our damage done modifier already, we was already at 18% for having the Vampire 3 stage passive, the 5% we have in innately. Say we do Change of Devastation, increase it by another 10%, so now we're at 28%. Right? Say we do the Minor Berserk, say like we're already min-maxing it, right? From there we're at 34%. We're at 33%. And then from that 33%, we then have this 6% increase, leaving us at 39% increased damage done. Now, mind you, we haven't even gone over sets, but if we was to start going over sets, there's other things that can increase your damage done. And right now, I really want to go over sets that increase damage done. There's very little sets that increase damage done, but of those that do it, they're very potent. However, they have caveats. They have something that typically stops people from running it. For instance, the reason why we're running dual wield in this sense is because you'll gain access to Black Rose Prison dual wield. So whenever you activate your Blade Cloak, whenever you stand close enough to the targets, it's going to give you 6% damage done and 6% damage mitigation. Now, Blade Cloak innately gives you major evasion, so you already got damage mitigation on top of a skill that's going to deal damage. And then on top of that, it has a really good chance of proccing poisons. So now you can proc your poisons if you have them on your front bar. You have the ability to increase your damage done by another 6%. So in this regard, if we was mid-maxing it on the DK with flame damage, we was at 39%, increase it by another 6%. We're at 45% increased damage done. And we haven't even talked about blue CP, because at blue CP you can increase that by a lot. But before we go into the blue CP, let's talk about the other two sets that are really worth mentioning right now. If you're having trouble killing anybody with shields, you can always run Shield Breaker, because it will give you 6% damage done on the 5-piece. Just flat out, here's 6%. But then on top of that, whenever a target has a damage shield, you will then increase that number by 6%. Well, you really double it, so it's a 6% doubled, now it's a 12%. That then can be stacked with Bastion and the red CP, which will then increase the damage done that you deal to shields by another 15%. So if you're really cautious and you really want to be cutting through damage shields like that, that's a valid option you can do. While at the same time, just having Shieldbreaker innately gives you 6% damage done. Is it the best thing to be running in groups? Unfortunately, no, because it is not, what would be the right word? It's not convenient, and we'll get into that later. And then lastly, the other set, and this one's also very much not convenient, is Essence Thief. Essence Thief gives you 10% damage done. It also gives you minor force, am I correct? So you get the damage done, and that's nice. However, you have to randomly start running around and finding a green orb. So if you're in a tower, and say you're on the 3rd floor, and it spawns on the 1st floor, you have to go and find it on the 1st floor and do everything else. That's going to be very difficult. With that being said, those are the major damage done sets to be knowing of right now, and we've already went over 3 classes that have insane damage done. All you really have to do at that point is start looking at tooltips, looking at other ways to increase damage done, including your blue CP, which we can go into that in a moment. But again, this is just damage done, and for the most part, most of these setups, I didn't really necessarily say you have to be running a particular set. I simply said run a lightning staff or have a skill. You know, when it came into the DKs, I did go a little bit deeper into it, so you can really see how that damage done starts stacking up. However, with the DKs, there's caveats with that. See, the DK has all that damage done, but it's primarily in flame damage. So if you was to say activate a synergy that did physical damage, you wouldn't have as much damage done. However, if you was to then activate a synergy that had flame damage, you have all that damage done. So there's caveats to it. It's the same thing with the Sorc to an extent, because it has a lot of damage done, but 5% of it is only coming in with shock. Blades don't have that. However, last patch, they used to be able to get to 25% innately. You used to be able to run a concealed weapon with Sea Serpent that would grant you 10% damage done without a named passive, and then you get Major Berserk from Sea Serpent, and then you can get Minor Berserk from Camo Hunter, leaving you at 25% before you include your CP. Getting into blue CP now, so you can kind of start seeing how this damage really starts going insane, is say we just really wanted to only worry about damage done. The most important things you need to have in terms of a bomb will be Master at Arms, Biting Gora. This is direct damage increased by 6%, and then AoE damage increased by 6%, making it where your AoEs are increased by a total of 12%. Stack that with Exploiter, and whenever the target's set off balance, you're going to deal another 10% damage done, meaning that if you was to find a target that's off balanced and you say you're on that DK, I believe it was at 49% when we last left off, you increased that by 22%. Yeah, I believe that's like 71% increased damage done. Wait, let me double check. Yeah, 50 increase about 20, so yeah, 71%. Yeah, we're at 71% increased damage done for your DK. And you've only already applied one debuff. We haven't even included Major Minor Vulnerability. We haven't ran other sets that make you take more flame damage. We haven't even gone into that. But now you know for your DK, oh, I can just make it where I'm sitting around 71% increased damage done. And then here's the crazy thing. As we've discussed all this damage done, it's time to stack the crit damage. So, let's continue with this DK, because you already see the 71% increased damage done. Let's start stacking crit damage. So remember how earlier we said, for this particular tune, instead of running the lightning staff, it's actually going to be running dual wield. The reason being is you can run dual wield axes, and each axe is going to give you 6% increase crit damage. Now, stack that two together, that's 12%. From that 12%, we've already sitting at a really nice number. We're starting out at 12. Say you run 5-piece medium, that's another 10. Say you run the Shadow Mundus, that's 11. So 12, 10, 11, 35% increase to your crit damage. Say you're Khajiit, right? You then increase your damage, your crit damage by another 12%. So we was already at 35, and now we're at 47. And then you have one more slot left in your blue CP, you're running Fighting Finesse. This is going to give you another 8% increase to your crit damage. So instead of sitting at 47, we're now sitting at a very smooth 53% increase to our crit damage. And then say we run a set like Griffin's Ferocity, not even Griffin's Ferocity, we're in a group, someone gives us Minor Force, alright? Because again, when it comes to some of the best bombs, you're most likely going to be in a group, someone's going to give you a buff. Or you can run Race Against Time, however it may be. There's multiple ways to get this Minor Force buff. You run a set, you run a skill. be in a group of people that are giving it out, you're getting an additional 10% increase to your crit damage, thereby allowing you to stop sitting at 53% and now you're at 63%. Mind you, outside of the one buff, and I believe we only really talked about one set that needs to be done in order to really max out the damage done for this DK, you haven't really ran anything that's directly increasing your crit damage. You have one thing that's increasing your damage done, and by you running axes passively, you're now getting crit damage. So just off of that alone, you see how DKs hit extremely hard. So that's why you find a DK and he's hitting you for 10Ks like it's nothing, and then he'll pop corrosive and now he's hitting you for 15s to 20Ks. This is why. Now typically that's single target damage, but if you ever seen them DKs that one up and carve and do all this other stuff, it's similar things occurring. Now yes, carve is different from Black Rose Prison dual wield. However, if he was to go ahead and drop, say there was two DKs next to him, and one puts down the Burning Talons and the other one procs the synergy, he could theoretically just burst you off of that skill alone. If you're squish enough, say you only have 20k health, he could probably hit you for a 15k, leaving you only at 5k, and if you already took damage before, you basically were just one-shotted off that. But that's not where it gets really dangerous. Where it gets really dangerous is if you then consider, say he hits you with a deep breath, Engulfing Flames, hit his Burning Talons, and his teammate does the same type of combo on you, and they already have Flames of Oblivion. So the Flames of Oblivion, after the 5 seconds, goes off and hits you. So you're taking double damage right here, and then they both proc the Ignite synergy, and they both hit you with it. You're dead at that point. You've been bombed. It's over. In that scenario, nearly every single one of those skills, if they was to crit, which is easy to get the crit chance up, or at least have it where at least 2 of those skills are crits, they could easily hit you for 9k. And depending on how squishy you are, you can get hit for 11 to 12k on some of those. Maybe not the deep breath, but most certainly, if those Burning Talons hit you and they crit, and it's the synergy, it is over. Good night. So just off of that alone, you've already understand how this damage done is going, how the crit damage is stacking, and for other classes, it's very much doable to have some type of number like this. For the blades, when I was saying we was at 25% without CP, once you include CP, the same type of CP as well, you're going to get a 22% increase to your damage done, leaving you at 47%. However, they can stack a lot more crit damage. Saber is still going with that lightning staff, right? You'll be sitting at somewhere around, let's see, well, you want to be sitting at 47% damage done, but let's go with like the last patch setup, the one I was talking about with Sea Serpent and all that, so you can just figure it out and like understand this, right? With the crit damage that I had, I was sitting at 63%. How I was doing that was running the Shadow Munda Stone, running the Khajiit, and then on top of that, running as Nightblade, you have a passive that gives you 10% increase to that. That's your crit damage, and then on top of that, you're running dual wield axes. So that already got you to like 40-ish%. You run a couple pieces of medium armor with fighting finesse, you sit at 63% without minor force. So if you was to get minor force at that point, you're sitting at 73%, meaning you're 2% off of the crit damage max. So therein lies why a lot of blades, a lot of sorks, and a lot of DKs can hit you really hard. Now, it's not limited to those classes. However, at this point, the video's trying to run on. I highly urge you to look at your class passives, look at your weapon passives, and pay attention to percentages, because it is very difficult to get those percentages without actively looking for them. There's very few times where you're gonna just, oh, I just have all this damage done and I didn't realize it. But it's very much doable to do that with weapon damage. It's doable to do that with pen. Because, again, as I was listing this stuff off, it didn't really need you to run specific sets. The only one where it says you need to be running a set to get a certain type of buff was Black Rose Prison dual wield. Everything else was merely passive. Let that sit in. It is merely passive. It is literally just looking at your passive skills, looking at what your weapons do, looking at this, looking at that, it is very, very simple. So now you know how to bomb, now you know how people bomb you, and now all you have to do is fill in the rest of your stats. So if you want to have high health, depending on your class, you can sit around from anywhere from 33 all the way up to 47k health. It all depends on how you do your class, and before you think, oh, I have to be more than 47k health, no, I'm actually referring to my mag blade. I can sit at 47k health with my mag blade bomb. It is doable. If y'all want to have a tutorial on how to increase your max health extremely high and have all these resistances and really just min-max your entire stat sheet, I can do that for you. That is very important in PvP, not so much in PvE. You only need certain things in PvE in order to be useful as a DPS. Here in PvP, you need to have a damn near everything. You need to be able to heal yourself, damage, all that. So again, look at your passives, figure out what you want to do, and then from there, look at your passives and decide from there. If you're trying to be Stam, even though during this video I was also going over mag things, what you do not have in terms of damage done, you gain in crit damage. So maybe it's best to stack a little bit more crit damage. But if you're really trying to bomb and really be the most effective you possibly can, bare minimum, when you're in a group or you're in Cyrodiil, your damage done needs to be sitting at a maximum, or not maximum, a minimum of 30%, alongside having 60% crit damage. If you don't have that, it's going to be very hard for you to go ahead and bomb. And I'm talking about bombing really good players and then bombing large groups. You're going to have a bomb here and there, and you might find success here, you might find success there, but it won't be consistent. You want this consistent? That's what you need to have. When it comes down to your other stats, your weapon damage could sit around, this is the same way you spell damage, but it can sit around from all the way from 5.5 to 7k plus, right? As long as you're sitting past 5.5, you're fine. And if you're worried about your pen, I've ran my mag DK with no penetration and still hit 9k on people. So if you're really like a guy that's really cautious and you want to make sure you have as much penetration as possible for most of your tunes and all that stuff, it is still doable to at least have 5k pen with that setup, but you're going to be losing on some weapon damage, and that pen won't make much of a difference in the long run, especially on your DK, because you can pop corrosive. But if you're not on your DK, again, I'll be making another video going over why penetration is not that important in PvP and why it's actually one of the most overhyped stats you can have. It's very important, but at the same time is also overhyped, because people would rather have a build that has 23k penetration but then it won't have any damage done or any crit damage, and they still expect to be hitting 10ks like it's nothing, and then they typically can't do that unless it's single target. So in there lies the issue there. But again, that's really it, guys. Like, I just went over basically, like, not necessarily as like taboo or anything, but this is literally like the easiest way to be increasing your damage done. There's not much else I can say. There's not much else to really talk about at this point, so I'm gonna end the video here. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, share this to your friends. Share this to your friend that is looking to bomb but doesn't know how to bomb, or share this to your friend that's overconfident in his bombs and thinks that he's going to be one-shotting the world and then he always dies, or he can deal decent damage but then he doesn't have his health right and he just dies. You know those mag blades. Send this video to them, send my channel to them. I'll be going over stuff like that to really min-max it. But yeah, it's been nice talking to y'all. Peace.